Good morning, children, and welcome back in your English class. And I hope that you all are fit and fine. And also, I hope that you are studying well at home and preparing your notes. Children, as you know that we have completed one chapter from prose section, that is the Portrait of a Lady written by Kushwant Singh. We have already completed that chapter with explanation and with notes. And in previous lecture we have completed the figures of speech with explanation and notes. We have already completed all the figures of speech, and I told you to write the figures of speech in your literature copy after the Portrait of a Lady. After writing the question answer of Portrait of Lady, you have to write figures of speech in literature copy, not in grammar copy. So write all the figures of speech with examples in your fair literature copy. So we have completed the figures of speech in previous lecture. In this lecture, children, we are going to start a poem from your poetry section, and the name of the poem is A Photograph. The name of the poem is A Photograph, and you better know, and I hope that you know about the meaning of the photograph. What is the meaning of photograph? अगर हिंदी में अगर हम बात करें तो photograph को हम कह सकते हैं चित्र कह सकते हैं उसको. So a photograph, the poem, the title of the poem is a photograph, and is composed by Shirley Toulson. The poem A Photograph is composed by Shirley Toulson, and she was born on 20th May on 1924 in England. And she was the daughter of Douglas Horsfall Dixon and Marjorie Brown. And she was passionate about creative writing and was greatly influenced by her father, who was the writer as well. Then she secured BA in literature from Brownburst College in London, and then this was followed by his desire, his curiosity, her interest, her curiosity, and her aspiration to take up the writing as her career. Then she also served editors of the many magazines, and then after that she married in 1960, and she had 3 children. And she was greatly influenced by Celtic Christianity. So children, what is the Celtic Christianity? What is the concept of Celtic Christianity? So children, I tell you कि the Celtic Christianity, you can say that कि Celtic Christianity is related to the central and profound principles based on the holy and ultimate form of God. Celtic Christianity is related to the central and profound religious principles based on the ultimate and divine form of God. And it is believed in this sect that there are 3 persons in one God, that are Father, Son, and Holy Soul. So this is the Celtic Christianity, and Shirley Toulson was greatly influenced by the Celtic Christianity, and we can observe its glimpses in her works, in her literary works, like Celtic Alternative in 1987 and Celtic Year in 1993. And these work added to her fame as a famous poet, as a famous writer. So children, this is the brief life sketch of the poet Shirley Toulson, who composed the poem A Photograph. So before starting the explanation of the poem, before starting the explanation of the paragraphs of the poem, first we will study about the summary. First we will take up the summary, explanation of the summary, what is the summary of the poem. So children, let's begin the summary of the poem. So the poem A Photograph, composed by Shirley Toulson, as I told you about her, कि Shirley Toulson was born in England and she was the daughter of a writer. So Shirley Toulson composed the poem A Photograph, and in this poem she recalls her mother and her memories by looking at the old childhood photograph, and when her mother was 12 years old or so. And then she has been deceased 12 years ago, and she cannot explain her grief over on her mother's loss. She cannot express her pain, she cannot express her grief on her mother's absence. And the poem is a tribute to her mother. The poem is a tribute to poet's mother, and she is looking. In this poem, the poet is looking at an old photograph of her mother, and which has a frame of cardboard. The poet, she is looking at the old photograph of her mother, which has a frame of cardboard. And then the picture has 3 girls, and in which the middle one is the tallest and the oldest. So the poet is looking at old photograph of her mother, and the photograph has 3 girls, and the middle one is the tallest and the oldest. And then it is her mother, with the middle girl, the girl which is in the middle is her mother. It is her mother, and when she was 12 years old or so. And beside her on both sides are her 2 cousins, Betty and Dolly, who are holding her hands and are younger than her. And they went for paddling on a beach holiday. Paddling means to swim in the sea with short movements of feet and hands up and down. आप कह सकते हैं paddling में होता है कि समुद्र में तैरना या तैरने की कला दिखाना. That is called paddling. So they went for paddling on a beach holiday, and her uncle took photograph then. And then the poet is noticing her mother's sweet face, and the sea touched her transist feet means which the transist means temporary, which is not everlasting, which is not forever. And that the sea touched her transist feet, which depicted that she changed over years, but the sea remained the same. It carries a theme. This line carries a theme that nature is everlasting, nature is eternal, nature will not perish one day, but the human life will perish one day. The human life is mortal, and the human life is not everlasting, the human life is not forever. So children, this line has a moral, you can say that he has a message that nothing is permanent in this world except the human soul, except the nature. So here the sea touched her feet. It depicted the fact that she changed over years, but the sea remained the same. So the line itself shows the meaning, the theme, that nature will not perish one day, nature is everlasting forever, but the human life will perish one day and will vanish one day, and human life is temporary, human life is not forever. So children, and then what happened? Then after 20-30 years, her mother would laugh at the photograph and would make her daughter would make the poet look at the photograph and would tell her that how their parents dressed them for the beach holiday. So the beach holiday was her mother's favorite moments. But for the poet, her mother's laugh was the poet's favorite memory. It means कि the beach holiday was her mother's favorite moments, but her mother's laugh was the poet's favorite memory. Both of them lost something which they cherished a lot, yet they cannot live that moment again. Sweet memories were memories now. Those sweet memories were only memories now. Because the poet Shirley was curious, was desperately wanted. She desperately wanted to live those moments again in her life with her mother, but that is not possible for her. That was not possible for her because her mother was died, and the sweet memories are only memories now. So now the poet's mother had been dead for the past 12 years ago, which is the same number as her age when the photograph was taken back then. And then she can you can say that the situation is something very critical for the poet, because she cannot express her grief over her mother's absence, over her mother's loss, because she died 12 years ago. And but she desperately wanted to live with her mother in those memories when her mother was 12 years old, but that was not possible for the poet because mother was died for the past 12 years. So the poem is a very beautiful poem, composed by Shirley Toulson, and here the poet was full of emotional situations, and she was feeling very happy with that photograph, with that old childhood photograph of her mother. And she really she was filled with joy. She is filled with inner satisfaction when she looked at that photograph. So children, this is the summary of the poem, that is a photograph written by the Shirley Toulson. Now in this poem, the poet compares what is the message, what is the theme of the poem. Now after the explanation of the poem summary, what is the theme of the poem? Now in this poem, the poet compares the internal, or you can say that the everlasting permanent nature of nature, internal state of nature, permanent state of nature, and the momentary state of human life. As I told you earlier, that human life is not permanent, human life is temporary, the human life is not everlasting, not forever. Human life will perish one day, but what will remain? The soul will remain, the nature will remain. So in this poem, the poet compares the internal, or you can say that the temporary state of permanent state of nature and momentary state of human life. Or you can say that nature is eternal forever, as when we can observe in the poem when the sea touched her feet, touched her mother's feet, and it depicted the fact that it depicted a theme that she changed over years, but the sea remained the same. It means the nature remained the same, but she changed over years. But her life changed, but the nature remained same. So the theme is there, and also the children, in this poem, the poet photograph in this poem, you can say that the theme of the photograph is lost memory and the temporary nature of the life, as I told you, and it explores how people may die, but in a strange way, but in a very strange way, they continue to live on in the form of memories. So this poem, I think this poem tells this fact. This poem explains this fact, that it explores how the people may die, but in a very strange way, they continue to live on in the form of memories. And these memories are not just restricted to one's head, but can also attain corporeal, or you can say that real, or you can say that tangible form such as photograph. So children, the theme of the poem is what? The theme of the poem is it compares the permanent state of nature and the momentary state of human life. It means that nature is forever everlasting and human life is not forever, not everlasting. It will perish one day and it will vanish, but the human soul will remain forever. And it also explores how people may die, but in a very strange way they continue to live on in the form of memories. And these memories are not just restricted to one's head, but can also attain a tangible, a corporeal, or a real form such as a photograph. So here also the poet recalls her mother and her mother's memory when she looked at her childhood photograph when her mother was 12 years ago or so. So children, but the memories will remain. The memories were now memories only, because the poet's mother died for past 12 years. She has been deceased. She has been deceased 12 years ago, and she cannot explain her grief over her mother's loss. So she feels very happy. In that, she feels very happy to see her mother's young age, to live with her mother's memories. But she was upset also because she cannot express her grief over her mother's loss. So children, we will stop here. So this is the summary of the poem, and we have discussed the summary of the poem, we have discussed the message of the poem, we have discussed the theme of the poem, as well as we have also discussed about the brief life sketch of poet Shirley Toulson. So these sections we have already discussed in this lecture. Now we will stop here, and in next lecture we will start the explanation of the paragraphs one by one. One by one I will read the paragraph and then I will explain the paragraphs one by one. So in next lecture we will start the explanation of the paragraphs of this poem, that is a photograph composed by Shirley Toulson. So children, we will stop here and take care of yourself and your family. Goodbye.